Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
You want to make sure you're tracking different points. Don't get stuck on body weight. Do
Right.
the occasional skin fold caliper. Do your weekly progress pics. Take measurements because the other thing that happens is like people quit. And people quit because their feelings are hurt, and
Right.
people's feelings are hurt because they feel like they're not making progress. And
Right.
so if you do like a weigh-in sheet and you see that your weight has been stagnant for weeks, but then you look on the next tab on your Excel and that's where you put your progress pics. You're like, damn, man, like look, my belly fat's a little bit less this week, or like I may not have lost anything, or I lost the pound, but like it's obvious that my face is thinner this week. So I need to celebrate those wins.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed Danny Vega. He's an expert in strength, conditioning, and performance. His passions include ketogenic and carnivore dieting, strength and conditioning, stoicism, and raising his sons, Dean and Desmond. In this interview, we discuss his journey into health and wellness, his typical eating and fasting routine, the importance of having a sound sleep routine, ways to overcome snacking, also his morning ritual, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. I really enjoyed my interview with Danny. I know you will too. And thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Danny Vega on, online coach. We'll talk all about that. And you have a Fat Fueled Family website, blog, and podcast. And you got a new podcast coming out next year. So we'll hit on all that. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I figured, I know obviously you come on a lot of podcasts, you talk about keto, and we'll definitely talk about keto. And I love what you do with your kids. How old are your kids now?
It's my youngest is 6 and my oldest is 9. Actually, right before I got on this podcast, we were looking at a DIY paper mache and cardboard Captain America
Oh,
shield. So I think we're gonna do that after I get off with you.
nice. I'll have to take some tips because I'm actually expecting a boy. Uh,
Oh, is this your first child?
yes, yes.
All right, man. Very good. Very
End of
cool.
June, end of June. So
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's nothing like having a kid. It makes you the best version of yourself, the most selfless, just hardest working version of yourself, man. It's a blessing.
yeah, very excited. And I mean, I have 2 dogs now, so maybe there's some preparation
They
there.
are, especially the crate training, I mean, and all that. But the funny thing is, you can't spray your kid in the face with water at night. That's the only thing when they when they're making noise. You can't smack them with the newspaper either. I don't think that's a good thing.
No, yeah, no, no, yeah, right, exactly. No collars, things like that. We don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to talk about. Well, why don't we get into, for people that don't know who you are, maybe tell me like your journey into health. I know you've been big in the keto and the weightlifting arena, just with some of your numbers I wrote down. But maybe tell me before that how you got into it and where you're at right now.
Well, man, I always was into for as far back as I can remember. I even have to this day, I have like this paper that I did when I was 5. And it said, what my name is, my favorite foods. And it said, when I grow up, I want to be and I put strong man. I didn't even know,
Simple.
what
Yeah.
the occupation was, but just a strong man. So I've always been into it. Like even like when I was in after school care my whole life, 2 working parents, and the guy who took care of us was a bodybuilder, and the other kids were probably playing hide and go seek, and I was with him, trying to do pull-ups, in the playground, So I've always been into it. In college, I played college football, and my strength and conditioning coach was a huge influence on me. And that's what kind of really made me think, why not try to do this myself? It's what I've always wanted to do. When I was in high school, I thought maybe I'll own a gym someday. And so that's what I did. I got my master's at UF and walked into the football weight room, didn't know anybody there. And I just walked up to the head strength coach and I said, look, I played college football. I just want to learn. I'll do anything. I'll be a fly on the wall. I'll mop. I'll do anything. And he gave me that chance. And, you know, almost a year later, I had worked my way up to getting a promotion and being moved to the basketball facility where now I was designing programs for the actual team. So
Mm.
I designed the programs and took them through the workouts. It was men's and women's tennis and men's and women's golf. And that was my first real like
What year was
hands-on.
this?
This was 2005. So I started at UF in 2004, in June of 2004, because I started uh, a little bit early because I did this along with my master's. I wanted to see, I wanted to get like some business knowledge.
Hmm.
So I found out with my advisor that I could do a minor in management in my grad school, which was kind of weird. I didn't know that you could do that, but I did.
Hmm.
And so yeah, like I said, a year later was getting paid, was working with assisting with men's and women's basketball, but really running the workouts for these other sports. And then we had that fantastic year. It was really like I think it was like 366 days. We won three national championships because we won two football championships and a basketball championship within like right around a year of each other. And
Wow.
of course, opportunities opened up there,
Yeah.
and our assistant head coach got offered the job at VCU,
Mm.
and he called me on a Sunday. I kind of knew it was coming because my mentor, who was the head strength coach for basketball, told me, and he's like, I talked you up, man. I told him that you're the guy. And he said, what do you think about Virginia? And I had never been to Virginia, but I said I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what led me to, I had my career in strength and conditioning, great years at VCU.
Hmm.
Where I am now, it's like it's a different thing, it's a different platform for me because I definitely am always continually learning about strength and conditioning and new methods and new wacky diets. There's this one that I just came across called the croissant diet. Have you heard about that one?
Oh yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
And I had just heard about it. So that one's interesting. I don't know why you got to eat croissants as your starch, but
Yeah.
why can't
Right.
it be like a sweet potato or something that's not, with wheat? But so I'm always open-minded with stuff, but now I have this other side that's focused on, becoming a better father, becoming a better leader. I feel like, especially after this year, I think a lot of men are leading these quiet lives of desperation, and they're either folding or they're angry and they don't know why. And I think it's because they need to work on some self-development. They people don't spend time on personal development. So I'm a lot of my content now is also focused on personal development, becoming a better person, a better father, a better husband. I'm a Christian. Have very strong beliefs when it comes to that as well. And I do believe that, everything that has been given to me, the platform that I've been given, it doesn't really have anything to do with me. And so if I make it about me, it's just gonna go away. So this year, I'm gonna be even more kind of doubling down on that. Sorry about that.
That's it.
And that's basically it, man. So I love strength and conditioning. I love nutrition, but just like the pillars of Fat Fueled Family, which is nutrition, fitness, education, parenting, and mindset, those are all the things that I'm really passionate about. And you can catch me reading a book on any of those subjects at any given time.
Yeah. No, I noticed that with your website. I like that. Education, mindset, nutrition, fitness routine, and peaceful parenting. And I love how
Yep,
you implement your kids with everything that you do. I think that obviously more parents should look to do that, right? Because
I think so. Yeah.
lead by example. Um, let's talk. We'll get into that. Let's talk a little bit about like your journey into keto. I know that's what you're probably most prominent for, from like maybe more of a carb based diet into keto.
Yeah.
And where's that at, and where are you at right now with that?
Well, I was tracking a lot this year and not hitting my macros consistently not hitting my macros for a long time
Hmm.
because I was stress eating. I was just I really felt like a lot of the habits I had built over the past, let's say, 10 years had been kind of disintegrating under the trials of this year, and it was discouraging. And I was like, why am I doing this? And then I realized, like, after 4 months, I was like, holy crap, maybe I was depressed, because I've never experienced depression. My wife has.
Hmm.
And I I I had a hard time. The very thing I speak about this almost every day, like, accepting the world as it is, accepting things as they are, and not consistently trying to fight against the way the world is. And that I did that so much this year. And I'm not like mad about it because I really learned so much and I feel actually a positive outlook on it. But it really took me off. So all that stress eating, because that's a big one for me.
Hmm.
I just said, you know what? I just want to keep it real simple. As far as like the way I eat, it's pretty much mostly carnivore. I don't really go out of my way to add carbs. My parents were in town, so last night we did have some Cuban food, and I had some yuca, which is like a starch,
Yeah.
which is delicious. But I probably have that like a few times a year.
Right.
So yeah, man. For the most part, I do think that you can do this all without even having like a ton of carbs in your system. Even the way I look at carbs has changed because I've just found this year I probably experimented more than ever with adding more carbs, and I just feel like they really do complicate my life. Because I have just it's less stable. Like the hunger is I started to feel hunger again, which I haven't really felt like that real hunger in
Right.
years.
Yeah.
And that was making it hard. I was trying to create a bigger deficit by using, less calorie dense sources like carbs and protein versus fat. And it wasn't working. It was like it worked as well as the willpower worked. And then when the willpower went away, like at 7 o'clock at night, it would be like, a few rice cakes with, honey and peanut butter, at the end of the night. And it was like things like that consistently throughout the year. So right now I'm not tracking. I don't see myself tracking anytime soon. And I just feel like January, this is probably going to be the third January in a row that I do meat and bricks. We just eat a bunch, and this is kind of what Robert does all the time.
Yeah. The keto bricks.
Just
Right.
Yeah, meat and keto bricks.
He
Other
took.
than that, I mean, what
He
did you
told me
say?
he's like when I had him on, he's like, yeah, for lunch I had sardines and keto brick. I go, ooh, I go, that's an interesting combination.
Robert
Um,
doesn't care about the combinations. Like when
yeah,
I hired him as a coach, because everybody needs a coach, man. Every now
right.
and then you want someone else to take care of things for you. And in 2017, I wanted to get to 6% body fat, and I had been doing it for 2 months already, and I had stalled. And I said, you know what, Robert, just take over. And he had me eating post workout. I was eating sardines and fat bombs, like sardines
Wow,
and chocolate fat bombs. Like
there's a
chocolate and
combo.
yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, um, speaking of that, I'm curious, because for myself, I used to be, and we'll talk about sort of the plant-based movement as well. Because I used to be like, I wasn't a vegetarian. I used to be like a pescatarian, so a
Hmm.
lot of fish. But I used to have like this big green salad in the middle of the day, and I just found that I would have a little bit, even though it was not like refined carbs, per se, but I just felt like this crash after lunch, even from that. And I've gotten away from that. I've gotten a little bit more into just a meat based diet, good grass fed, grass finished meat. Uh, how do you go about like your meals? Do you? I know you're into some fasting. That's a big thing that I'm into as well. What is your fasting and feeding windows, and how do you go about that?
Yeah, I used to be a lot more like, hey, just kind of eat when you're hungry. It ended up always being like a 16 to 18 hour fast almost every
Hmm.
day. But now I'm a little bit more intentional, with the exception of today because my parents were leaving, so we had an actual breakfast.
Hmm.
I was talking last night on a Zoom call about stress and how, cortisol in the morning is higher, and I think that's why a lot of people do so well with the skip breakfast type of fasting, because we like to get things done early in the day. We're really productive with that higher cortisol,
Right.
and eating like a breakfast for me, it just kind of it puts a big brick wall in front of all of that for me. I'm just like, I don't want to do anything for a while, or I at least need like a 30-minute break, which to me it's like you're knocking yourself out of that flow state. And so I don't know if I'll ever do the earlier window,
Hmm.
because I want to be realistic with myself, because I told myself I would try the earlier window, but I think that what I could do is be more disciplined with cutting off the feeding window. So even though I can
Mm,
still start it like at an 11 or 12 p.m., I would just make it a 4 hour window and maybe stop at four, because
right.
my sleep, it's crazy. Like my HRV, because I've been tracking HRV and deep sleep and REM sleep
What do
for
you what do
years.
you use? Because I just got the Whoop, but
How do you like the Whoop?
I don't know. I haven't gotten it yet. It's in the mail.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think the accelerometer on the Aura
Okay.
is the best, or the gyroscope or whatever. It's just kind of,
Cool.
from what I understand, the data, like it's the best. But maybe that Whoop one
I'll let you
on the
know.
wrist is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love my Aura. I mean, I haven't had any issues, and I actually have had the same Aura ring since 2017, which I think is pretty darn good. People usually have to get them replaced and stuff. And but what I found was, like, this year my HRV tanked for the whole year. Like, it's like my HRV, my deep sleep, even my total sleep. Like, I used to sleep like right around, on a good night, maybe between 6.5 and 7 hours, and on a regular night between 6 and 6.5 hours.
Hmm.
Because even before I started a ketogenic diet, I would sleep about 7 hours, and
Okay.
I 7.5 hours maybe. And I noticed right off the bat, when I started a ketogenic diet, I cut off about half an hour to an hour from my sleep. I woke up earlier, and I don't know if it's just that tiny little bit of bump in cortisol, from being on a ketogenic diet, that did that. But I never had issues with it. I was always rested.
Hmm.
But this year, it was like it got down to some periods, as long as months almost, where I would be sleeping between 4 and 5 hours. And this is something that I've argued against for years. Like, hey guys, take care of your sleep. Don't worry about anything else. Take care of your
Right.
sleep first. But it was just, I don't know. I think it's just really, really high stress levels. Again, all the stuff I talked about before.
Right.
So now I'm just really trying to focus on getting myself back on a good schedule. My last night again, I didn't get to bed till 11 because my parents were here,
Hmm.
and I thought I was going to give myself one more week to transition between, like, the 6:30 wake ups that I've been having, which have been beautiful,
Hmm.
and my regular 4:30. But my wife is crazy like me, and her alarm, she didn't change her weekday alarm back, so she had it at 4:30, and so I slept another 5.5 hours last night. So
Oh,
I feel great though. So yeah, what were we talking about with the sleep? Was that the reason why we brought up the sleep?
yeah. Well, we were talking with you mentioned your HRV. Um, re-
Oh, because of, like, all the stress and stuff from this year.
yeah, yeah.
I
Um,
think that's why I went on that tangent.
um,
But yeah,
all right, Danny. We had a little audio issue here, but back up. Um, let's perhaps talk about what would you say? I know you were talking about, stress eating, and I think that's a topic that is worth talking about because I think it's an issue that a lot of people have, especially this past year. We're at the end of 2020, and it's been, definitely a difficult year for a lot of people. What tips would you give people as far as overcoming that stress eating and sort of how to get out of that rut?
I think, mindful eating is a major, component. And mindful eating, what it is it's not you're not giving yourself permission or not giving yourself permission to eat. You're just trying to figure out why you think now is the time that you need to eat.
Hmm.
So a lot of the time when I stress eat, it's usually at night, and I'm like, I've eaten my last meal,
Right.
and it's just kind of like anxiety, whatever it is, and it's this mindless, kind of thing that where I go to the pantry and I, pick up whatever it is that I have there, and I just start eating it. And so I think that you have to think about all the reasons why we'd want to eat. Like, is this actual hunger? No, and that's okay if it's not actual hunger. Sometimes, sometimes we eat something because it's delicious. Like, my mom made my delicious my favorite recipe that she makes, and she left it for me, and I'm not hungry, but I just want to eat a piece of that pie right now or whatever it is.
Right.
And that's fine, because food is fuel, but at the same time, we can't deny that food can also bring us a little bit of joy because of, maybe we associate it with, our childhood or, whatever it is. Then we can look at other things. Like, a lot of people tend to think, well, it's lunchtime. I think I need to eat lunch. But is it really important to eat lunch right now? Are you really hungry?
Hmm.
And I did mention the fact that I used to be all about being relying on hunger, but I also personally like to try to stick within a similar time frame of my meals, because circadian rhythms are not only set by light, they're set by our feeding times. And so if we can have predictability with the light, making sure that we're not getting a bunch of blue light at night, making sure that we're getting really bright light in the morning, and then we also have a pretty regular eating schedule, that's going to help us. Our bodies, we're going to be more rested, we're going to burn more fat. But now, mindful eating is just where you're just asking yourself a few questions, like, why is it do I think that I need to eat right now? And chances are, if you're honest with yourself, you can kind of find out, like, oh, I just wasn't thinking. A lot of the time, when with me this year, what ended up happening is became a habit.
Hmm.
It became a habit where, especially I was doing a cut. What a joke. I was doing a cut. Um, and the last, I looked better a month out than I did at the end of the cut, because the last month I was just so stressed that I was just trying not to gain weight. I was consistently going over my macros, like 300, 400, sometimes 500 calories or more sometimes. And so I think that's where it starts. I don't think we need to come at it with an attitude of restriction, because
Right.
we're going to be fighting ourselves. And so um, you got to give yourself grace. But at some point you have to decide what's really important. Like, this one little whatever it is it really going to bring you the joy, or whatever it is that you think you're going to get out of it? Or are you still going to feel just fine not eating that, wake up tomorrow, and probably feel much better tomorrow than you would have, and maybe physically, but it's probably going to be mentally more than anything. When we say no, we get stronger at saying no. And when we say yes, we get weaker at saying no. And so, like, that, if that alone could be something that you say, look, just say no to yourself this time, because the minute you open it up to do something where it's kind of like you're quitting, it makes it so much easier to quit next time. And then you become habitual.
Hmm.
And like I said, when it becomes a habit, you don't even, you're like, my wife always says, like, she's like, you don't think sometimes you'll just eat a whole block of cheese or something, and you'll be like, what happened? How long was I out? Like, you didn't even notice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'll tell you what's gotten me in good habits is because I could be this could have been the same way some as far as eating. Like, after you're done eating, you want to sort of close the kitchen. I always like pick a time that I want to cut off and be done. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go for a walk, or some type of distraction, even just like a hot tea or something, maybe like
Yeah.
a peppermint tea, or something that'll just sort of quench that. Maybe you want to have that snack, but you know what, maybe just make some tea, and you'll realize after you're done drinking that cup of tea that, like, you really weren't hungry.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Rhonda Patrick shared a study recently about just how hard it is to remove thoughts from your brain. you can't remove a thought, so you got to replace it with a different thought.
Mm,
And so, what you're doing is you're replacing these things with different thoughts, different habits. And
right.
so maybe at first it does have to be something where you have like some sort of kind of hand holding with yourself, where you're like, okay, what am I doing? What's my strategy for when this happens? The first thing, of course, is pay attention.
Mm,
If you're not paying attention, you're gonna be, oh crap, here I go again. I did it again. All of a sudden, I ate all of it. Wait, how did that happen?
right.
Um, so if you can say, look, I really want this. I really want to eat this, but you know what? I'm gonna do this instead, because instead of giving into a desire that's temporary, I'm gonna be building towards something that actually helps me in the long run, and that's gonna bring me a different type of satisfaction that's deeper.
Right. That's part of the reason why I like fasting. Um,
Yeah, that too. You give yourself more leeway.
yeah, like just the mere fact of abstaining from food for a while not only lets your body heal, but like it just puts you in this position of power and control, as opposed to a lot of times with people, they're controlled by their hunger cues or by certain foods. And it's not. I'm not saying it's not a black and white thing, and it's not that easy. Some people have never done any type of fasting, but you can ease your way into it, and you'll start to realize that these hunger pains, they come and go,
Mhm.
and eventually, like you talked about, you sort of start having eating mindfully. And especially if you're only having one meal a day or two meals a day, you want to really make sure that you have a good nutrient dense meal.
Yeah, and what did you say about you said something about the fasting that I thought was really, really good. Um, you're in a position of control, and easing into it. Oh, I
Right.
totally forgot what it was, but either way, I think you're right about that. Like, oh, the hunger pangs. You mentioned hunger
Yeah.
pangs, and I wanted to talk about that because, like, people feel hunger pangs when they're doing like an extended fast, or maybe if they're doing maybe like their first 16 or 18-hour fast, maybe they are coming from a higher carb diet and they might feel a little bit of hypoglycemia. But like for the most part, like, they're not even hunger pangs, they're just like cravings.
Right.
They're not real hunger. And
Right.
so one thing that you can also ask yourself, Danny, I'm going to say Danny just because I have been doing it. It's been like a good couple of weeks that I've been kind of solid, but yeah, just one of the things that you can do is just be like, are you hungry? Is this hunger or cravings? Just kind of ask yourself that. That's a good way to kind of get around it.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe instead of when you get that hunger pain, because I remember back years ago, I used to just grab like a bar, or I remember I think I overdosed on Kind bars at one point in my life.
Oh man, the kind bars.
I don't eat them anymore, and I
That's a
actually
veggie friendly bar. Yeah, the vegetarians love it. I had a vegetarian friend who I used to work with when I was a medical device rep, and she, whenever we were at the office, like doing stuff at the home office, they would have a ton of kind bars, and she would
Mhm.
just be grabbing them and taking them home
Oh,
for,
those things
for
could be
herself.
addicting. Yeah, yeah. But I remember I used to get like these inkling of hunger, and I would just grab for some type of bar, and you know I think what's good is first just have a glass of water. I think
Yeah,
like a lot of times you're dehydrated.
yeah.
Maybe put some sea salt in there, get some electrolytes and minerals and things like that. What what's your muscle building program right now for you and for your clients? I've gone through a bit of a transition for myself. I've been doing traditional lifting for like over 20 years. But I'm curious to know what's your weekly routine like as far as lifting.
Yeah, I've gone through a pretty big transition in the last 3 years because, I went from being more of an athlete type of training, so more focused on power, efficiency, moving with force, moving with violence and speed and all that,
Hmm.
to learning a lot from my buddy Ben Pekulski, who really taught me a lot about building muscle, as an end all be all. where I was always focused on building muscle, but really I was focused more than anything on building strength and power and speed.
Right.
So, so that was a big transition because whereas before, I had, deadlifted 700 on stage on a powerlifting stage. One of I think the first workout that I ever did with Ben, we were doing deadlifts with 500 pounds and we were doing 5 second negatives. And it was the most terrible thing I had ever done. I had never done a slow negative on a deadlift before. I would always drop the weight.
That sounds
And so,
painful.
yeah, it's a lot more now. It's a lot more focused on trying to become as inefficient as possible. So I focus on quality over quantity for sure. And that
Efficient
goes
as
for
possible. Efficient.
actually inefficient for
Inefficient. Okay.
yeah, inefficient because what I want is I want to create like a longer lever, for example. So, let's say if I'm doing, a lateral raise,
Okay.
your typical person, if they're just kind of mindlessly doing a lateral raise, they're just going to lift it up. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create length. I'm trying to lengthen that lever out as long as possible. So I'll focus on, instead of just bringing it up, I'm trying to reach out as much as possible and I'm trying to create distance. And
Mm.
so I focus now a lot more on what is the function of the muscle and how does my anatomy work?
Mm.
Because we all have like slight variations in our anatomy. So if I understand that my origin or my insertion of my pec, my pec's job is to bring the origin to the insertion, connect it. That's what the when it contracts, that's what it's supposed to do. Then I can do different angles and I can see the fibers how they move, and then I can kind of design exercises that work perfectly for that. And that's important because you may see people online telling you like this is the best glute builder or this is the best quad builder, and that's just not accurate because it may be the best quad builder for a group of people, but it may be terrible for another group of people. Like you're not accounting for the length of the person's femurs. You're not accounting for, any of these anatomical differences. So I'm a big believer in what Ben says SSI. So it's basically set up for your anatomy. The first thing is whatever exercise you're doing, you set up for it for yourself, kind of customize for yourself. So like for me, I won't really go higher than 30 degrees on an incline for my incline bench because I know that for me it works best 30 degrees. 45 too much.
Mm.
Then stabilize. You want to make sure that the joint or joints connected to the muscle that you're trying to really contract are as stable as possible. If something's moving, then you're not contracting that muscle to the best of its ability. And then the last thing is the eye, which is initiating the movement the right way. And so what that does is it gives you the best possible muscle contraction at every length of the contraction. All of us, I think, when we learn how our muscles work, how our bodies work, we know how to contract our muscles in the shortened position. Everybody knows how to flex their bicep, flex their quad, flex their calf. But how do I flex my bicep when my arm's straight?
Mm.
And those little things, learning those little things and learning how to execute exercises properly with the idea of muscle contraction being the number one goal is actually what has allowed me at 39, with testosterone probably dropping a little bit by this age, with just everything else, being a family man, owning two businesses, all these things, they kind of wear on you. And I look at videos even from 2017. I'm like, man, I don't know if I could do that volume I used to do. I don't
Yeah.
know. And but I can get a lot of quality even with much less volume
Hmm.
because of my execution. And so what I've been focusing on since after we had our first fitness retreat, which came out awesome in October. I can't believe we got it done. In
Oh.
this year of all years, we were in the Hard Rock Riviera Maya in Tulum, Mexico. It was a blast. After that, my wife joked around and said, your arms are too big. You need to work on your shoulders. And I said, shut up. But she was right. She was
Yeah.
right though. I was like, I wanted to focus on my shoulders. So I I've written so many programs for people. I love writing programs. Program design is like one of my favorite things to do.
Mm.
And so I decided, you know what? I've never really created a program for myself that specifically aimed at bringing up one muscle, one body part. And so I created this uh, shoulder and lat kind of focused program. It was based on a 14-day rotation where I looked at all of the muscles that were like the main priorities, and I listed them, in order of priority. And then I said to myself, how many times do I want to train each of these muscles? And it turned out that I felt like I could train in a 14-day period. If I did it right, I could train my shoulders 5 times,
Hmm.
because I would be able to do 3 of those days were actual shoulder focused days, but 2 of them were like, the shoulders were just some ancillary
Like a
exercises to get a little
secondary.
bit more volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
I did it. What'd you say?
no, I was just gonna say it's interesting. I like talking to people who've been lifting for a while, like myself, because you always got to try to find ways to sort of keep you stimulated, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
and mix
Because
it up. Yeah.
everybody gets bored, man. Everybody gets bored, and like that's why I think some people like I don't care. I've had clients who have hired me just to learn what I'm doing with my clients so they could do it with their clients,
Yeah.
and I don't mind that one bit. Like I think that I wrote an article. I think it was my first online article that I wrote in 2006. It came out in you remember, I think it's still out there, is Elite FTS. That's that website's
Hmm.
still
I
up there.
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you search for it, it's called No Ideas Original, and it was about my first year as a strength and conditioning coach, and I talked about how, in strength and conditioning, we all steal from each other, and it's cool. It's
Yeah.
totally cool. Like we steal from each other as long as you're giving people credit. If you're creating a program that it's like heavily based on conjugate, you better just mention Louis Simmons. You can't not give homage to Louis Simmons, which by
Right.
the way, I have a lot of his, even though I don't really train that way much at all lately, for almost a decade, I have his all his articles bound, printed and bound in my closet here. But yeah, so I once I did this shoulder one, and I found that it was really really working well as a thought exercise. I said, what would it look like if I created one for chest? And I actually had one of my clients who wanted to build his chest and his quads a little bit. So
Mm.
I created a chest and quads one, and then I did a glute focused one, and then I did an arms focused one. And it was just really fun because what you want to do is the threading that needle is keeping the volume with everything else adequate to kind of maintain that muscle, but not too high so that you're burnt out. I
Mm.
think what most people do, they think more is better. It's like that. What's the Dunning-Kruger effect? You know what that is? When you learn a little bit about something, you kind of think you know all about it, and then when
Mhm.
you learn, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. And so most people like they kind of get the gist of like weightlifting and stuff. And maybe there's someone who says, I want to do my first triathlon, but I don't want to lose my muscle. So I'm going to keep doing my bodybuilding program. And then I'm going to incorporate the cardio stuff from the triathlon program. And then 3 months later, they're wrecked in some way or
Right.
another, either, a chronic injury or a devastating injury. And that's why, like, it's important, and especially if you're going to be mixing like like concurrent training, like strength training with endurance. It's important to find a good coach that can create a program that accounts for everything. Because I guarantee you, if you're working with your powerlifting coach and he's got you on a powerlifting program, and then you bought some online program to get you ready for your first half marathon, and you throw that in, and you're not really telling your powerlifting coach, your powerlifting coach is not going to like that, because when he wrote that program, he didn't think that you were going to be running 9 mile runs on Saturdays, like.
Yeah.
So,
A key theme that's come up. I've interviewed Brad Kearns and
oh, I
I
love
just
Brad. Yeah.
yeah, Brad and Dr. Ted Naiman,
Oh,
and
yeah.
these micro workouts that keep coming up in these interviews where, like, I think the old school approach would be like, let's just burn out and just be sore for days, but really you don't need to do that to get effective results. Uh,
Get that stimulus. Yeah, you just need a little bit of stimulus.
yeah, a little bit of stimulus. And, I've actually been using, Robert just interviewed Dr. Jaquish, the X3
Oh,
bar.
the X3 bar. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I've always just done traditional lifting my whole life, and I started doing it over the quarantine because I just wanted something that I could do at home more. And gosh, like I just had a DEXA scan. I just did a podcast on this where I just talked about it because not that I want to sit and talk about myself, but I thought it was cool results.
Yeah.
I put on like 5 pounds of muscle just from doing that. So I've
Just from
uh,
doing the X bar, the
yeah,
X3 bar.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, I say I say it's a combination of that and then implementing quality protein really helped
Yeah.
me as well because I think my body wasn't getting enough protein for how active I was for a while, and I think adding in the quality meats, um, and then and then the extra like my legs, my glutes, like anyways,
That's
yeah, so
awesome. Well, I've been this is one that I've been wrestling with for almost a month now because I like 2021 is very, very important to me.
Mhm.
I know it's just another calendar day on the calendar when January 1st comes, but I have a lot of big goals and I still haven't done, I got a few more days to do finish up my yearly review and my planning for next year.
Mhm.
And hopefully I'll be done with that by the 30th. But one of the big holdups for me has been this internal battle that I've been having because I stopped training jujitsu
Mhm.
like probably March of this year. I started in December of 2018, and I was getting into a rhythm. I was learning from specifically from someone that was helping me take my game to another level, who was a black belt and who was
That's
similar
awesome.
to me because he's big,
Right.
and anybody who does jujitsu will tell you that being big is a huge disadvantage at first because you tend to always rely on your strength.
Right.
It's what held me back from, ever becoming the biggest Olympic weightlifter because, I power cleaned and jerked like 315 before I learned how to clean and jerk because I was clean and jerking in college and we were all like muscle cleaning, muscle cleaning them
Right.
and, muscle snatching everything. And I guess that's okay because, we need those big traps and rhomboids huge and everything anyways.
Mhm.
But it's that strength that was in my way. And you would look at
Right.
someone like my wife who didn't have that strength and her form was flawless. So I've had this idea of being capable, it's why I got the concealed carry. It's why I taught my son. I recently, my oldest knows how to shoot a shotgun, a rifle, handgun. He shot like 95 rounds the other day, shot a 22, a few 9 millimeters, 22 rifle as well. And now my dad just gave him for Christmas his 40-year-old semi-automatic 22 rifle with a 30 round magazine. So I want my boys to be capable. That's why my boys have never stopped jujitsu. And to me, I want to do jujitsu again, but it's like this battle between jujitsu and lifting,
Mm.
because lifting brings me joy, and but does lifting bring me joy, or is it just because I know it does bring me joy, but is it because I'm really good at it? It's pretty much,
Could you,
even
is
though
it,
there's lots.
yeah, I was just sorry to interrupt
Good.
you. But
Oh no,
could
go ahead. It's okay.
doing both, it's interesting you say jujitsu because I've been in Muay Thai for a long time and I've always,
Oh, Muay Thai is great
I,
too.
I
I
love
love Muay
Muay
Thai.
Thai. Yeah. So maybe that's what you do. Go do stand up, start doing stand up, and then you can keep lifting and
I did. Well, I did. So when I was a strength and conditioning coach, there was a Muay Thai school, like within walking distance, and I found myself halfway through my second year there, and I just started taking a class or two, and then it got to a point where I was taking two classes a day. One in the
Mm,
morning, one at night, and it just was like, just it got to a point. I remember my shins were so well conditioned,
mm,
and then I remember back when I was still not sober, because I've been sober for 8 years. One of the last times I got drunk with my friends, we had like a 1 a.m. Muay Thai fight. Like
oh
me
my
and my
God.
buddy, we were going blow for blow, like just kicking each other's legs, like. And I woke up the next day and it was just the worst pain ever in my
Wow.
shins, you know. But like what the problem is that when you love lifting like the way I love lifting, you tend to put the new thing and try to work that around your lifting schedule. And
Hmm.
that doesn't work well because when it's something where you need to have a lot of skill acquisition, you're gonna
Right.
have to at least do it like 3 days a week,
And
three
you
to
have to,
4 days a week.
right. And you have to
Yeah, you can't be
sacrifice
doing it.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to sacrifice one.
Right.
And if you're telling me that, and I can almost I can guarantee you, I got to talk to Dr. Jacquish because I know he's like reached out to me a few times, and I really need to talk to him because um, if you're telling me that that's something that can preserve some muscle on me, and if they're short workouts, I already
Hmm.
have my pull-up bar, my rower, my a bunch of bands. I got TRX system. I got a few dumbbells in my, and I got a slam ball. I got a few decent things in the garage already. And then pair that with the fact that Crunch. Don't get me wrong. I love Crunch because they've been pretty darn good. Like throughout all this stuff, when we live in Florida, and Florida, they say that we're crazy and we're all dying, and we're like, ha ha ha, yeah, but our
Hmm.
gyms have been open since May, and you're not telling the truth. You can go
Hmm.
ahead and say we're dying.
What part of
It's
Florida?
not the truth. I live in Tampa. I
Tampa.
grew up in
Okay.
Miami, but we live in Tampa.
Okay.
Um, and so now all of a sudden, I mean, our governors, we call him G Santis. He's DeSantis, but we call him G Santis. We think he's a G. Um, he's like, look, there's no more lockdowns. Stop with this BS. Like stop doing this. But the companies are the ones who are really, really continuing to say, you need to do this, you need to do that. So Crunch says now, hey, you guys are going to need to be wearing a mask into the gym, and then you could take it off when you walk in. And I have a problem with that. I'm not going to do it. So I said, I was kind of sick last week. I felt like terrible out of nowhere. Felt like I had a fever, body aches, and one of my other guys that I just went hunting with at Roberts, Brandon, he was feeling the same thing. And I know it's not COVID because I had it in August. So
Mm.
I wasn't able to go to the gym, but my wife went to the gym and she said, if my husband finds out about this, we're gonna cancel. He's not gonna like this one bit. So you better put something in the file and tell no one to even ask us. So maybe this kills like three birds with one stone. Just I already decided it was either gonna be January or March. I might just wait till March and then start back up with jujitsu and kind of rearrange my training schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been good. The X3 has definitely helped me out, and I only do like not yeah, like it's just one set. Like I've been able to increase my volume throughout the week and everything, and
Is it
um,
is it high intensity training? So are you doing like train to failure type stuff?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
His theory is one set to failure in different
Okay.
ranges. You start full range and you slowly do, yeah. You pretty much just yeah. So I'm
Gotcha.
curious. A couple more things. Your morning ritual. I'm a big morning ritual guy. Maybe give some tips out there, or what is your typical morning ritual like?
I love this. I love
Yeah,
this is one of my favorite subjects because I think if people can just create a good morning ritual, it's like what I've done by
it's a game
7:30
changer,
a.m.
right? Yeah.
It really is, man. My wife used to never understand like why I would wake up at 4 a.m. Back then it was 4 a.m. because I was a medical device rep for almost a decade after I got out of strength and conditioning, and
Mm,
then until I quit and came back into it. Um, and like, so I wake up this morning, it was 5, I already told you that or 4:30, actually, my wife, it was 4:30. And
right.
it's kind of like you wake up immediately. When I wake up, my sauna's right next to my bed. So I turn on the sauna, go to the bathroom, wash my face, weigh myself. Not doing it this week, but starting next week, I'll get back into doing this, which is I like to check my blood sugar, my ketones, and I'll definitely be doing that the first month of January alone, at least, because I wanna just see where my metabolic health is because I haven't been tracking anything. And then I go straight to I have this big area rug in my living room, and this is straight out of Brad's book. Brad was has been talking about his morning like little movement series that he does,
Mm-hmm.
and I've taken a lot of the ones that he does and incorporated them, and then kind of brought in some of my own. It's about 10 minutes of dynamic warm up type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the whole time I'm listening to this really good YouTube station called Stream. All it does is it plays me like Bible verses, and so it's kind of like affirmations but with
Mm-hmm.
Bible verses. And
Okay.
so when I'm done with that, by then and I also have to brew the coffee. Very important. Until my wife beats me to it, which I try not to let her beat me to it because then she's like, "You didn't brew the coffee. I had to brew it." Um, so I try to brew the coffee because I've been brewing her coffee for years, and then I go straight to the sauna. 20 minutes in the sauna, I'm doing guided meditation, guided prayers, and just kind of chilling out in the sauna.
Mm-hmm.
Then from the sauna directly to the shower, walk to the shower, take a cold shower for about a minute,
Mm-hmm.
and that alone, that's before I even get into my planning and all that stuff. That alone, that takes about 40 minutes. That
Okay.
alone will have you feeling like $1 million.
I
You
love
got
that.
some blood flow, you loosened up your back, you stretch your hip flexors out a little bit, all those things. And then the next thing is I usually spend about 2 hours planning my week on Sundays. But with the nature of our business, like you have people booking consults all the time, and then you got to wake up that morning and see like if there's anybody new on the schedule who
Mm-hmm.
put themselves on your calendar. And
That
then just kind of like, what'd you say?
I was just gonna say that's a great morning routine,
Yeah,
and it really sets up the rest of your day.
yeah.
Um, you got a sweat in. You did some cold thermogenesis, a little cold therapy, a little meditation. What else did you say?
Some more
Movement.
hormesis from the yeah, more hormesis from the heat from the sauna too.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
just sauna on top of all the you've probably seen all the stuff from Yuri Laukkanen, the Finnish. He's a cardiologist and PhD, and he's done two major studies. The first one was mainly focused on cardiac uh, outcomes, and then the second one was based on brain, and Alzheimer's and cognitive stuff. And
Hmm.
look, those two things alone, the fact that you'll live longer, and they've even with normalizing and kind of standardizing for different lifestyles, sauna helps you live longer. And so I actually told my dad before he left us today, like, you need to, this is the routine that I want you to do. And I kind of walked him through his routine that I wanted
There you
him to
go.
do. Um,
How about
yeah,
you got to get
he
yourself a
doesn't
cold
listen though.
plunge like Brad has. You got to get yourself a
I
tub.
want to,
Yeah,
I want to, man. Do
I
you have
feel
one?
I don't. I'm moving soon, and I'm gonna get one because I am putting a sauna in there, infrared sauna, and I want to get
Yeah.
a cold tub. So I will be getting one. But I for right now I just fill up a regular tub, and it
Hmm.
usually gets pretty well Chicago. I'm in Chicago, so we have cold winters and yeah. So but um right there alone, just jumping in the cold right away. I mean, who needs coffee, right?
Yeah, exactly, man.
Right?
Exactly.
That's a
People don't
stimulus.
understand like just how, and Mike made a really good point, Mike Mutzel, because we were all hunting together. We didn't know he didn't know he had COVID. We didn't know he had COVID.
Oh,
Neither of us cared, by the way, because we just none of us are really concerned for ourselves. We're
right.
concerned for others if we're walking around and not knowing. And that's why when I got COVID, I self isolated not just 10 days from my first symptom. I isolated 10 days from my positive test, just because I was afraid that I would spread it to someone. But Mike says that another reason why these little biohacks are great is because they provide us with feedback. And one of the first things he noticed before he even knew he had COVID at the time he started to get some sniffles and he thought it was a cold, was just how impossible it was to do his cold plunge.
Hmm.
Like it was just almost impossible. His body couldn't handle it, and he also couldn't hold his breath for more than 30 seconds doing his Wim Hof stuff.
Right.
And so that's another thing that we can use these things for as some biofeedback to let us know how things are going. On top of course, the HRV, like as far as the HRV stuff, like I noticed when my temperature was up, this last week, I was able to see I went up as high as 104 on the worst day. Um, and I will be able to see that every night, which is really helpful, man. It's really good to have all these little feedback. And I think people should understand, like, one of the reasons why we do these experiments is also because of what we learn about our bodies.
Hmm.
And then we can say, oh, so when this happens, maybe I shouldn't do that, that hit workout that day. Maybe I should do something more like some walking or a light row or something like that. So yeah.
Right, because recovery is just as important as the workout itself, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, well, I wanted to ask. I asked this question to all my guests as sort of a closing question. What would be a tip you'd give someone, you know, maybe in their mid 40s and 50s, middle aged, and they're just, you know, they want to get their body back to what it was maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago. What would be one tip you'd give them?
I would say ask yourself how far you're willing to go. Like start thinking of all the situations that you think that may happen. Would you be willing to say no to that social engagement because it's not going to be conducive? And would you be willing to do that consistently for a while? Because if it's taken you, let's say, 5, 10 years to get to where you are, this is going to be a long haul. This is going to be something that it's going to be long, and it's going to feel at times, especially if you're doing it right and you're training hard and you're staying focused, it's going to feel like it's taken too long, and it should end. And I'm sick of it, and when is this going to happen? And that's when you need to think of, like, focus on the daily tasks, the
Hmm.
daily, you know the daily process. Because one of the reasons why I love stoicism is, one of the aspects of stoicism is they talk about your will. And your will is not like your will to say no to things, it's your will to keep going. It's your will to say, I'm going to continue to do what I think is the right thing and what I think is the best course, with no regard to when it's going to end, when I'm going to hit that goal. And even before that, I would back up and say, you have to make a true decision. Like, you have to make a real decision, because a lot of people say, you know, I want my body back, but it's really just emotion. It's not like, you got to put thought into it. You got to, like, make it as ugly as it's going to be. Like, say, like, look, it's going to, think of, like, the worst parts of it, and then ask yourself, are you willing to do that? And if you are, then I think you're on a much better start. Like, you have to understand, like, if you want your best body, maybe it takes a little bit longer, because maybe you also have been a crappy husband because you've been focusing on your career, and your relationships have suffered and your body has suffered. So maybe you're going to have to split those, because you don't want to also uh, let that relationship get any worse. You want to work on both of those. So yeah, that's a really good one, man, especially at that age. Just
Yeah.
understanding, like, certain things, like, getting your digestion in check. You have to look at it from every angle. Like, make sure
Right.
that you might need a digestive enzyme for a while, because you're not assimilating your food, and you'd be surprised, how well just taking a good digestive enzyme makes you feel your energy's better. You're absorbing the food better. You may not be as hungry. You may find that you don't need to eat as much, because you're actually taking what you're eating and assimilating it better.
No, I like that. I mean, there, you know, like you mentioned, focus on the process, right? And I
That's
think
it.
people can get overwhelmed, but if you sort of take it day by day, just do a little bit every day, you know, then eventually, obviously, if it's 10 years you've been, let's say, not where you want to be, it's going to take, like you mentioned, it's going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you focus on the process, maybe get yourself a coach like Danny. You know, have, like you said,
And I
everyone.
will say one thing,
Yeah.
one more thing. You want to make sure you're tracking different points. Don't get stuck on body weight. Do,
Right.
the occasional skin fold caliper, do your weekly progress pics, take measurements, because, the other thing that happens is, like, people quit, and people quit because their feelings are hurt, and
Right.
people's feelings are hurt because they feel like they're not making progress. And
Right.
so if you do like a weigh-in sheet and you see that, your weight has been stagnant for weeks, but then you look on the next tab on your Excel and that's where you put your progress pics. You're like, damn, man, like look, my belly fat's a little bit less this week, or like, I may not have lost anything, or I lost the pound, but like it's obvious that my face is thinner this week. So I need to celebrate those wins.
Yeah, celebrate the small wins, and like you said, tracking it is important because, like I did that DEXA scan, which gives you more than just body
Dex is the
fat.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more than just body fat percentage and like bone mass, but it also gave me how much muscle I put on, how much fat I lost, and like I put on 3 pounds. So if someone that didn't get a DEXA scan, they look at that, be like, oh, you put on 3 pounds, but yeah, but I put on 5 pounds of muscle and lost 2 pounds of fat. So it's
Oh,
like,
that's good. That's
yeah.
good body comp changes. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Let me tell you, I had when I did the thing with Robert, this was crazy. I did with Dexa too. I started at 11.4. My
okay.
last one, I quit at 6.5. I was like, you know
Wow,
what? 6.5 is 6.5.
that's
But
great.
dude, I had lost 14 pounds.
Of fat.
Only
Or
14
14,
pounds.
just
And
14 pounds in general, right? But your
yeah,
body
and
fat
I cut
percentage
my
went
body
down.
fat in half
Right,
because I had that massive swing. Like I lost a ton of fat, but then I
right.
also gained some lean mass, which let's say it said that I had gained like 6 pounds of lean mass
That's great.
over a 4 month period.
Wow.
That translates probably into like a pound of muscle, because it's water, it's connective tissue, it's other stuff.
Mhm.
So, but still, like I was able to put a pound of muscle on in a deficit.
Right,
That's not supposed to happen.
right. Yeah,
But that's what happens a lot of the time with these higher protein diets. They're really good at sparing muscle, even
yeah,
when you're in a deficit.
yeah. No, yeah. So you want to make sure you sort of look at everything, not just don't just weigh yourself. I think it's good to do something like, especially in the beginning of the year coming up. Um,
Diversify what you're tracking so you're not discouraged for sure.
yeah, I like that. Well, this was great. We could obviously talk for a long time, but we'll leave it with that. We got a lot of good information. Danny, people can find you your website, right? Is that Fat
Yeah, so
Fueled?
we got the
Yeah.
yeah, fatfueled.family. That's where the podcast is. And then if you want to catch me on Instagram, it's dannyvega.ms.
Yes. Perfect. All right, Danny. Keep up the good work. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yep. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.